Hi, readers. We are here for our first of the year Because Fiction interview. And I'm so excited to be doing that this year. And I'm so excited to kick off our first one with the amazing Liz Tolsma. She is such a blessing to me, and I just love her dearly. So I'm excited that it's you, Liz, to kick things off with. I'm such a blessing.
I'm so excited to be here, and you are such a blessing to me as well. It's mutual, definitely.
Well, I thought before we get into the questions that the readers have sent in to ask you, I thought maybe you can give us a brief update on what's been going on with you, any book news and all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, I have been very busy working on my next book for Barber after the next one in the True Colors Crime series. So I have a World War II coming out with them. They're starting a brand new series called Heroines of World War II. And so my story is called A Picture of Hope. So I've been working hard on that one. And then I will be working with the incredible Sandy Barela and her team also on the fairy tale mysteries. So I have that book to write yet too. Don't worry, Sandy, it will get done and turned in. I am in the planning stages of it. So that I've been very, very busy writing. That's what I have been up to.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of fun things in the works, and we're so excited about your World War II, because I know that's your niche. You love World War II, and I'm excited that you're able to do that. And the true crime, that I just finished reading The Gold Digger. What an amazing book, Liz. You are just an incredible writer. And I'm so excited to be working with you for the Ever After series. That's going to be such fun. I mean, in the 20s, and you combine mystery and fairy tales. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
Certainly not. No, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun to write. It's really, I've done the romantic suspense, but not really a mystery. So it's been a little bit different for me, and then I've really had to plot it out so that I can drop all the little clues along the way. And my dad has kind of been helping me because he's a big mystery reader. So he's been helping me figure out what clues to plant along the way. So it's been kind of fun.
It sounds like it. I'm so excited. So why don't we, Liz, now that we've heard all that's going on with you, why don't we take some reader questions? Does that sound good?
That sounds fabulous.
Okay, so the first question, and actually it was asked by a couple of people. Rory asked this along with Shonda Fisher. They want to know what your favorite genre is to read.
To read. Pretty much anything historical, although if you put a World War II into my hands, I'm going to be a pretty happy lady. I love to write it, but I also love to read it. I love to read what other World War II authors are writing and see what else is out there, what kind of stories they're telling, because there are so many amazing stories to tell from that time period. We will never run out of World War II stories to read. But I have also really enjoyed reading some of the straight historical fiction, some of the romantic suspense. I surprised myself. It was only a few years ago I read my first romantic suspense, thinking that it just wasn't my thing, but I have found that I really enjoy them as well and really get into them. So pretty much anything historical, if it's well written, is going to make me happy.
Oh, how fun, friend. I love historical too. Do you read fiction? I know you have to do nonfiction for your research, but do you also enjoy reading nonfiction books about World War II and historical events?
I don't have a lot of time to read just for pleasure, especially outside of my genre. So what I read nonfiction usually is just for research. I have never been a huge nonfiction person. I just have too much of imagination or something. I don't know.
I'm with
Um,
you, friend. My husband and I, well, because he's a huge nonfiction nerd and I'm a huge fiction nerd, and we'll contemplate. I get enough nonfiction in my fiction.
right. That's right.
So, okay, so Karen Wisnowski, and please forgive me, readers, if I pronounce any of your names incorrectly. But she wants to know, how did you come up with a color series? And maybe we can pair that with Sarah Snyder's questions of, if you choose the events for the True Color series, or if they're assigned to you.
Actually, I did not come up with the idea for True Colors Crimes. That was Becky Germany, who is the acquisitions editor over at Barber Publishing. This was her brainchild, and she's just full of so many good ideas. And she approached several different agents with this idea of writing these romantic suspenses based on true historical crimes. So then the agent sent it out, and my agent contacted me about this idea. And she said, I know you write mostly World War II, Liz, but I think that your World War IIs really are romantic suspenses in their own way, which is true. They really are. So it wasn't too much of a leap for me to make that. And Becky's original email that went out listed about a half a dozen or so possible crimes for us to write about. And I sent in 2 synopses. One ended up being the pink bonnet, and the other one ended up being the green dress. Then after that, the series was doing really well, and then they wanted to continue it. So they put out a call for more stories. And then that time we were able to go and do our own digging, come up with our own stories. So that's where the Gold Digger and the one that's coming out in May, The Silver Shadow, came from. Those were from my own research into true historical crimes.
And I just saw the cover for The Silver Shadow. It is beautiful, friend. I love it.
I do too. It's really cool. Yes. Yes.
So how fun. So our next question comes from Dina Dix. She was wondering how you come up with the titles for your book, and which book took you the longest to write and why.
Well, so sometimes the ideas for my books, like the ones for the True Colors Crimes, those were all set by Barber pretty much. In fact, they changed a couple of the different colors that I had used because other people were already using them. The villain in The Gold Digger was called by a nickname that had a color in it. I don't want to give it away because I don't want to give away who the villain is.
Yeah, right.
And so that was the original title of the story, but that color was already in use. So it's like, oh man. So we had to come up with something else. But I think The Gold Digger really, really works. Yeah. Sometimes it just comes out of my head what I want to title my books. The one that I'm doing for the Ever After series, I racked my brain so hard for that because Shatana Havoc has the best title, The Last Gasp. I love that. And it's like, okay, I've got to be equal to that at least. So my family and I sat around just trying to come up with something that would be really good, would pertain to the story, would convey that it's a mystery. So that's why I came up with Slashed Canvas. So they come from all different places, and it just depends on the book that I'm writing and on who I'm writing it for.
Gotcha.
And the book that took me the longest to write probably would have been my very first full-length novel, The Snow on the Tulips, because I had time to write that. I didn't have a contract for that. So I could take my own sweet time. And I really spent a lot of time working on that, doing the research, fine-tuning it, getting it just the way that I really wanted it to be. And since then, I've had to learn how to work under deadline. And So I've learned how to write a whole lot faster. I can't mosey around and dilly-dally like I did with Snow on the Tulips.
Oh, I love Snow on the Tulips. And I've been a big fan of yours for years, friends. So it's so it's so fun to read your books. And yeah, working on a deadline can be kind of difficult.
It can be very, very stressful, especially if a book is not going the way that you want it to. The Pink Bonnet just wasn't coming together the way I wanted it to. And I was struggling so much with that one. And less than 2 months before it was due, I ripped it to shreds and like started from scratch. So
that's so hard.
That was quite very, very nerve-wracking for sure, to try to crank that one out in such a short amount of time.
I can only imagine, friend, how hard that would be. Okay, so our next question is from Rebecca Diedrich, and she says, what was the most difficult character and what made them so difficult to write?
I think that the villain in The Gold Digger had to be my most difficult character, just because this villain is really, really evil, deep down to their very core. So to try to convey that evil and show all of that was very difficult. It was so hard to write that, knowing what that person in real life had actually done, and reading what that person was actually like was so hard, and trying not to overdo it in the book, although the crimes that surround that book cannot be overstated in their gruesomeness and in their just pure evil. So that was a really difficult character for me to write. And that villain obviously had to be in the book, so I couldn't bypass it. It was a fine line to really walk, to convey the true depravity of this person's soul without turning readers off.
And you did a great job, Liz, with that book. One of my favorite things about that book is you get the depravity of the villain and the horrificness of the crimes that happened. But you wrote it in such a way, like a lot of it takes place off screen, so you don't get that darkness, that weighty, that can come with reading other true crimes, where you're just like, oh, this makes me sick to my stomach to read. I mean, the crime itself makes you sick to your stomach, but it is not one that is so heavy that you can't enjoy reading it. You did a really good job. I was talking to Shatona Havoc this week about the true crime series, and it was hard to pick our favorites, but this was one that we talked a lot about, and how it was our favorite just for that reason, one of our favorites for that reason, that you can enjoy reading it and the storyline, even though there's a heaviness to the crimes that happen. You did a great job, friend.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Okay, so the next question is from Marilyn Ridgway. She said, what was the strangest but yet impressive inspiration you've ever received for one of your books?
Okay, so way back, quite a number of years ago now, Barber was still doing their 4-in-1 novella collections. Or maybe they were the 9-in-1s, actually, the 9-in-1s. I should take that back. And Becky had put out a call for this novella collection called Rails to Love. And each of the novellas in there needed to have a train. It had to play some kind of part in the story. And I didn't have a contract at that time on the horizon. And so I was really interested in trying to get into this collection. And I spent all day brainstorming different ideas, what might work, what I would want to do. And it would seem that every time that I come up with something then some of the other people who had been asked to do this would have a very similar idea. And it's like, oh, you keep stealing my idea. Why are you doing that? You know, so frustrated. So at dinner that night, then I was telling my family about this, and they were throwing out all these really wild ideas. And again, half of them were either taken by somebody else already, or else were just not going to work. And I was doing the dishes in the kitchen afterwards, and my husband was taking our daughter upstairs to put her to bed. And all of a sudden he shouts down the stairs, "Circus Train." Now we live in Wisconsin, and it's home to Circus World Museum, which in Baraboo, which was the headquarters for the Ringling Brothers Circus.
Wow.
And, you know, years ago, they used to have the Circus Train would go all through Wisconsin, would end up in Milwaukee, and then there'd be a big circus there. So you could see it, and they'd have a parade through the streets of Milwaukee. So it's like, I don't know why I didn't think of Circus Train. That was just like so obvious. But as soon as he said that, I like had an idea and I went running with it. And it ended up being a really, really fun book to write.
How fun, friend. It's so fun when you find something that really clicks and you go, oh, this will really, really work. And I did not know that about the Circus Train. How fun.
Yes, yes.
So Shatona Havig, we've talked a little bit about her. She put forward a question for you, friend. What is the book you most want to write but aren't sure you will?
That's another really hard question. For a long time, I've had a series sketched out that takes place in the coal mines of Verdan, Illinois, just east, very directionally challenged, just east of St. Louis in Illinois, a big coal mining area. And my husband's great-grandparents came from Wales to that area and were coal miners. And the more that I researched Verdan and my husband's family, I found out really a lot of interesting things, both about the coal mine there and about his family, how he had a great uncle who was killed in the mines. And so it was just really interesting. So I have this whole series sketched out around that, using my husband's family as inspiration for it. But I've been so busy writing World War II and True Colors Crimes that series has not happened yet. I'd love to write that someday. We'll have to see if it happens.
Oh, I would love to read that, friend. It sounds like such a fun series. And especially when you can pull from your family. Oh, and to take a trip there to show readers what it looks like today. And that would be so fun. You could do a lot with that.
I really could. And I like that it is close enough for me to take a trip there and take a look around and dig into all of the records and everything that they have there, and maybe even discover more about my husband's family that I don't even know yet. So that would be cool.
How fun would that be?
Yeah, it would be.
Okay, so our next question is from Pam Harstad. She wants to know how you decided to start editing. I thought that was a really interesting question.
Yes, and I have done some editing for Pam, so it's fun. It was fun to see her pop up on there. I'm not Karen Kingsbury or Tracy Peterson, definitely not any of the big authors or anything that pull in a lot of money and can make a living at this. There really are very few authors who can make a full-time living at this. So I needed to supplement my income in some kind of way. I'd been working as our church secretary for a lot of years and really wanted to be free of that so that I could have time to work on my writing and focus more on that and really make that my career. But I needed to bring in some income other than my books. And I've always loved editing. It's been one of my favorite parts of writing, and working with other authors and helping them to polish their manuscripts has always been a lot of fun for me. So it was sort of natural that editing came along, and it's something that is good that I can take jobs when I need jobs and when I have the time. And then when I'm busy and under a lot of deadline, then I am not under an obligation or anything to have to do that. And I can make my own schedules, and I can also work at it from anywhere in the world. So if we want to travel or go away for a weekend or whatever, I can still have that freedom, which I didn't have when I was working in the workplace.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, friend, because it gives you the flexibility, and it's still in the same vein of where you want to be, writing, and, the more we read and edit, the better our own writing comes.
Definitely. I have learned so much from editing other people's work that I've been able to apply to my own work, that I'm really glad that I did this. I keep learning more and more each time I do a different edit. So it's been a good thing all the way around.
How fun, friend. Okay, so the next question is from Patty. She would like to know how long you've been writing, and she says that she's seen quite a few books published from you, and she wants to know if you have a set writing schedule that you follow.
I have been writing for a very, very long time. Really started when I was a child. I always had a vivid imagination, always was making up little stories. And so I've always loved the written word and loved playing around with words and having fun with them. But my life took a lot of detours along the way. I taught second grade. I worked as our church secretary. I worked writing advertising copy for a real estate advertising company. So I've done a lot of different things in my life. But it was after 9/11 that I really got serious about it. I was still, that was a long time ago now. So I was much, much younger then than I am now. And when you're that age, you just don't think about the end of your life or anything like that. But that day really made me stop and think that God has never promised us tomorrow. And if this had always been a dream of mine and something that I had always wanted to do. And I decided I didn't want to get to the end of my life and say, I wish I would have. I wanted to get to the end of my life and be able to say, at least I tried. Because that's the further I figured it would go, was at least I tried. And I never imagined that it would become a career like it has. So my first book was published in 2011 then. So there was a long time where I had to learn the craft and not perfect, but get much better at the craft, because you can never be perfect. Yeah. And also, we adopted another child who had special needs, and we were homeschooling at the time. So I wasn't getting a lot of writing done at certain points in that time, between the time I started writing and the time I was published. But after 2011, all 3 kids went off to school, and it's been crazy ever since then.
And we're so glad you decided to start writing, friend. I couldn't imagine the Christian fiction world without you.
Oh, thank you.
So this one goes back, this question's from Linda, and it goes back to your true crime series. She wanted to know what kind of research goes into your books, like the true colors on the historical crime, and does the research ever seem scary to you?
The research doesn't seem scary to me because these characters are long since dead. The real people have long since passed away. So I don't have to worry about anybody coming after me or anything like that. In fact, I wonder sometimes if their descendants or, their relatives realize even what kind of skeletons lurk in their family closets. So in that way, it's not scary for me, although the crimes themselves are creepy, and it really can be hard to stomach reading sometimes what some of these people did, because it's gruesome. And as I said before, you can't imagine the depravity of people and what they would do to other people. As far as research for it, it's a lot of reading about these crimes. Some were much easier to find information on. The Pink Bonnet, there was a lot of information. The Gold Digger, there was a ton of information on those two crimes. They're both really well-known crimes. So there have been books upon books written about them, and it was easy to find what I needed there. And with The Gold Digger, it takes place in LaPorte, Indiana, which is only a few hours from my house. So I was able to go down there and about a year ago and spend the day at the LaPorte County Historical Society Museum. And they were very gracious there. They pulled all kinds of records and newspapers and gave me lots of information about it. And it was good to see the area with my own eyes. It gives me a better feel for what it's like. So I really enjoy when I get to go to the place where the book is situated. It just helps so much, even though it's not always possible. Even then, I will be on Google Maps looking around, trying to see what the area is like, get a feel for it. The Green Dress and the one that's coming out, The Silver Shadow, there was not a lot of information about those crimes. The Green Dress, most of my information came from the trial transcripts. And so I had to read a lot into that, like the personalities of the different characters that were actually historical in that book. The Silver Shadow, there was even less. There is very, very little information. And I should have known that. I got myself into a little bit of trouble pulling a story from a book that I found in a book called True Crimes the World Has Forgotten. I should have known that research would be really, really difficult.
But then you're bringing it back to light where people remember what happened to those people where the crime took place. So that's kind of
right.
Itself.
Yeah, and it did give me a little bit more flexibility because people don't know it's crime. So if I fudged things, if I got things wrong, a lot of people know about it. So it wasn't a big deal. So there was a trade-off there.
So that's kind of fun. Wow. And so you actually read the court transcripts for that crime?
For the Green Dress, yes. 400 pages of court transcripts. Sometimes very, very dry and dull. And then all of a sudden, I'm surprised nobody heard me screaming for joy because there would be like a little nugget in there. I'd be like, oh yes, the information I need, finally.
Yeah, how fun, friend. Well, that's so interesting. What I think our readers are going to find that really interesting that you read the court transcripts and how that book came together versus the other books. That's so fun. So our next question comes from Sarah Taylor, and she wants to know where you come up with the places that you write about.
Well, again, it depends on the publisher and the story. So for the True Colors crimes, obviously the place is really pretty much picked for me because it takes place in the place where the crime actually was committed. So that was pretty easy for me to decide where to place it. The other books, my World War II books, I started off Snow on the Tulips is set in the Netherlands because it's based on a family story and my family's from the Netherlands. So it was really easy to pick that one. And the same thing with Daisies Are Forever. That's set in Germany. It's also based on a family story. So that made a lot of sense. My son picked the setting for Remember the Lilies because he's also a huge World War II buff. He's a US Marine. So that makes him actually much more interested in the Pacific theater because that's where the Marines were the most active. And he said, Mom, you've got to set one in the Pacific theater. So that's why that one's set in the Philippines. So it's a lot of it is dictated by the story, and some of it is just where I find, because so much is based on true stuff, even outside of the True Colors crimes, I like to find true stories and turn them into something fictional. And so I just go looking in that really dictates where a lot of this is set. In fact, for A Picture of Hope that I'm working on now, that's dictated because I found a really interesting story and it's set in France. And so my story's set in France.
Well, and that makes sense because you want the story to be believable to readers. So if you take something that's set in France and put in America, a lot of readers won't.
It definitely would not have worked in America, not at all.
So June Jacobs, she says that you've written books in several different genres, and I think a lot of people are familiar with your historical, but you also write Amish, and she wants to know, what is your favorite genre that you write in?
Well, that would have to be World War II. It's just, if I could do nothing but write World War II, I would do nothing but write World War II. Although it's been a lot of fun to write the True Colors crimes, and I really, really enjoyed doing that. And it was a nice break from World War II, which can get quite heavy. Yeah. So it's been nice to step away from that for a little bit, but I'm excited to be coming back to it. But I love to write as many different genres as I love to read. So if I read it, chances are I'm going to be very happy writing it.
That makes sense, friend. So Ruth Ann Lingwall, she says, and we touched on this a little bit, but you can maybe go a little bit more into the backstory on how you began to write your first novel.
So Snow on the Tulips, as I said, is based on a family story. When I was in junior high school, my dad took my grandma back to the Netherlands where she was born. And then he brought back slides. Yes, that's how old I am. And I remember sitting on the living room floor, and he had the screen all set up and the slide projector all set up to show us the slides that he took when he was in the Netherlands. And it came along to this picture of a monument that had been built to these resistance workers who had been killed at the very end of the war, and how my great aunt had saved one of the men's lives by hiding him in her house. And even as a very young person, that story really struck a chord with me and resonated with me. And I wondered, how in the world could I be related to somebody who was so brave and could do something like that? And it just never left me. And as I really got into writing and worked on my craft, I got more confident, and I decided that I was going to go to a conference and I was going to pitch this book. And that's where it all started. The book got picked up. I hadn't written a word of the book yet. So I did have to sit down and get started writing on it. And it just flowed from there. And it was so much fun to finally be able to write my family's story.
That's amazing that it's your family and about your family history. I mean, like, you think for your kids, how exciting, and your grandkids, how exciting that's going to be to have this family story. And so many people have been able to enjoy it as well, friend. That's just so amazing. So fun.
Yeah, it really is. And my great aunt's granddaughter helped me with some of the research for this book and everything. And she was just thrilled that the story was being told.
Wow. Did you know her before you wrote this story, or did this story kind of connect you to?
No, we had known her. We still keep in touch with some of our family back in the Netherlands, and she and her son are the ones who have traveled to the United States several times for family weddings. So I've met them on several occasions, and it's always fun to see them and talk to them.
How fun, friend. Yay. So we are down to our final question. Can you believe it? There's been some wonderful questions that the readers have put to you. This has been so much fun.
Yes.
And so our final question is from Nyla K. Wilkerson. And she says, do you have a book that you've been trying to finish for years? So I know we talked about a series that you want to do, but is there a book that you've started and been trying to finish? And what is it about it that has made it so difficult to complete?
I don't really have any books that well, no, I guess I take that back. Back to that coal mining series. I do have like a chapter and a half written of that one. And that's all. The further I get in it, I keep, I run out of contracts, and then I sit down to work on that for a while. And then somebody picks up a different story of mine. And so then I get sidetracked. And so that's the one that I do have a start on, and just can't seem to get further than a chapter and a half into it.
Well, we hope that you'll be able to get back to that one soon, because it does sound like such a great series, friend.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to write. So we'll have to see what the Lord has in store for me in the next several years, and we'll see if that one ever materializes.
Well, it's exciting to know that you'll still be writing in the next several years, friend. We have a lot of books to look forward to. And I wanted to thank you so much for taking your time today to kick off the year with me and to answer readers' questions. You're always so gracious and wonderful about giving your time. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you and love you. And thank you for doing this with me.
Oh, I love you too, my sweet friend. And it was more than my pleasure and my honor. And thank you for thinking of me.
You're welcome. So we will see you in a couple weeks, readers, with our next author interview. And thank you for putting together the questions. Oh, friend, we need to pick a winner for our $5 gift card.
Yes.
For the readers who put forward questions, we have a $5 gift card for them from Amazon. So who did you think, Liz? Did you pick one for us?
Who asked the question about the best inspiration for a book? I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The best, Marilyn Ridgway. So what was the strangest but yet impressive inspiration about the circus train? We talked about that one.
Yes, I loved that question. So let's give the gift card to her.
Okay, so Marilyn, you are our winner. And we're also doing a giveaway of The Gold Digger from Liz Tolsma. I'm giving away a paperback. So, or if you prefer ebook, I'd be happy to give you the ebook as well. So make sure you comment below. And if you are seeing this in a group, make sure you comment on the original post. So that way you get your entries in. And we will be picking a winner to receive a copy of The Gold Digger. Yay, I'm so excited. And again, we thank you for joining us, readers, and we'll see you next time. Bye.